Something sticks out, excuse the cliche, like a sore thumb. I'm going to let you hear Hakeem Jeffries. You do not need to listen to Elsie Stefanik and co. If you have other things to do. But the reason I'm putting it all together is it is quite clear. Now the economy is doing very well, and that's according to Fox News, not according to me. The Trumpy-Tampton Republican Party needs something to grasp, to grab onto as they go into the fall election 2024 mode and campaign. And the border appears to be where it is all going to happen. So listen to Hakeem first of all, and then you can hear just the start of the nonsense. And they all sound like they're repeating the same instructions, the same notes they've been briefed on. There's no solution. It's just chat, chat, chat.
Mr. Leader, the Senate is obviously still negotiating the supplemental package, which would include border funding in Ukraine and Israel. But Speaker Johnson seems to be not interested in whatever they deliver before the text is even revealed. This despite the fact that there does appear to be enough both Republicans and Democrats to pass the legislation if it were to make it to the House. Have you and your colleagues discussed any effort to try and bring this legislation to the floor outside of the Speaker, a discharge petition, something along those lines, and how urgent do you think this need is? And then secondarily, if it emerges in a situation where the border package is something that Speaker Johnson just won't move on, do you believe that that should be separate from Ukraine and Israel in a separate package?
Well, there are three steps to this process. First, we need to evaluate what comes out of the Senate, if indeed an agreement is reached, have a family discussion about the best way to proceed if there is legislation before us sent over from the United States Senate, and third, enter into a course of action designed to make sure we are delivering real results and solving problems for the American people, as opposed to playing partisan political games. For months, the American people were lectured by the extreme MAGA Republicans about the need to deal with some of the challenges at the border. House Democrats, President Biden, Senate Democrats are ready, we are willing, we are able to work together to address the challenges at the border and fix our broken immigration system. It should be done in a comprehensive, bipartisan, humane fashion. That's President Biden's commitment. That's the Senate Democratic commitment. That's our commitment. Lectured for months about issues at the border. National security funding held up by extreme MAGA Republicans who tied funding for Ukraine, and that's a war that's all about democracy and freedom on the one hand, autocracy and tyranny on the other. And we, as Americans, always stand on the side of democracy and freedom, held up Ukraine funding because of the border, and now they're against the legislative effort that they themselves were apparently for months ago. Why? Because the extreme MAGA Republicans who have taken over the Republican Party are not concerned with solving problems. They are not concerned with making life better for the American people, and they certainly are not concerned with delivering real results. And that's a shame. It's a shame.
Would you be open to separating them, though, sir, if it comes to that?
It's a conversation that we'll have to have as part of a family discussion, and we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Thank you.
For the American people who are watching today, there is a reason that the border crisis is the #1 issue, and it is because it has been a catastrophe of Joe Biden's making. You heard from members all across this country who talked about how every state is a border state, whether it's New York, Colorado, Indiana, Pennsylvania. We heard from Texas, West Virginia, Illinois, Louisiana, Minnesota. Every state is facing this border crisis. It's a humanitarian crisis, a national security crisis with hundreds on the terrorist watch list. It is an economic crisis, a sovereignty crisis, and a constitutional crisis. House Republicans will continue to lead on securing the border and returning to the most secure border policies that we've ever seen under President Trump. We passed passed the Secure the Border Act. We know we need to return to the Remain in Mexico policy. We must end catch and release. We have to support our Border Patrol officers and our local law enforcement across this country, and we have to continue building the wall. We passed our Secure the Border bill. We will continue to stand to make sure that we're protecting this great nation, and we will hold Secretary Mayorkas and, most importantly, President Joe Biden accountable, and the American people are going to hold them accountable as well. Thank you very much to our guests who are here today. Thank you, Anne, on behalf of so many victims of human trafficking that are facing this humanitarian scourge. Thank you, Brandon Judd, for your advocacy on behalf of your colleagues in the Border Patrol. I represent Border Patrol agents in my district who we work with every day. So as you talked about the challenges they're facing because of the surge on both the southern and northern border, we hear that every single day from my constituents. And thank you, Sheriff, on behalf of all the incredible law enforcement officers, including the 15 county sheriffs in my district who work so hard every day. We're so grateful for your leadership. Thank you very much.
Chair thanks the gentleman. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I thank my friend from Texas. I thank the witnesses for being here. I don't want to cover stuff that's already been covered, and I apologize for flight getting here as fast as I could. But I think, Mr. McClintock, a question for you about the 4 bills that are before us. We're dealing here with respect to all 4 of them with individuals who are present in the United States by virtue of having come here without papers. Is that correct? No? What is the classification of people in all 4 bills of the people we're dealing with here?
It applies to both legal and illegal immigrants in many of the bills. And just very simple reasoning, and that is, if you're a guest in this country, we ask that you obey our laws. And if you are not going to obey our laws, we need to show you the door.
We're dealing with non-citizens in all 4?
Correct.
Are we dealing with LPRs in each or all of the 4?
Yeah.
Legal permanent residents?
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
But they've been given that status by virtue of our efforts as a country to say you can come here.
They are guests in this country.
Provided that you would follow the laws of this country, correct? Are the people that we're dealing with here with respect to all 4 of these bills, however, in significant numbers, we're dealing with a lot of people who are here illegally?
Of course,
Here,
well, especially,
right.
for example, at the border chases that are imperiling lives and killing law enforcement officers.
And in most cases, with respect to Social Security fraud,
Oh, yes.
right? By definition.
Yeah, exactly.
So to be clear for the people watching at home, we are moving legislation to try to deal with, in some cases, legal permanent residents or people who are here who have been given legal status by virtue of our desire to be here, but in many cases, dealing with people who are here illegally.
As a practical matter, though, we need to make the distinction of the legal immigrant who's come here and obeyed all of our laws is an exemplary citizen. You'll find that they commit far fewer crimes per capita than American citizens do. These are the folks who have obeyed all of our laws. The Democrats love to compare them and confuse them with illegal immigrants whose very first act entering this country is a misdemeanor of federal crime. And so it shouldn't surprise us that as a practical matter, these laws will apply overwhelmingly to those illegally in this country who have already demonstrated a disdain and disrespect for our laws.
But to put a finer point on it for the people back home watching this, we're talking about individuals who have been given a status to be in the United States, who have then carried out some action that we believe would require either deportation, inadmissibility, whatever is in the particular statute that we're proposing, or in the lion's share of the numbers, we're talking about people who came here evading our laws, ignoring our laws to come here, whether it's across the Rio Grande or otherwise, overstaying your visas, right? You came here, violated our laws, overstayed your visas, whatever it is. And you have, in this one case, committed Social Security fraud. In another case, whether you're here with legal status or came here illegally, you're you're engaged in support or otherwise engaged with helping Hamas in this one particular instance, or perhaps you have been convicted of DUIs and obviously engaging in high-speed chases with respect to the danger posed to Border Patrol and otherwise. So again, just for clarification, this is what we're talking about here. When the average, I'll finish this, then I'll leave it open for the question. When the average person that I represent, if I ask the average person that I represent in the 21st District of Texas, in Central Texas, do you think that any of the individuals, any one individual who came here in violation of our laws, whether they felt they had a reasonable claim to some coverage for asylum or some basis for parole or anything else, but they came here, most people in my district, I don't know how your people in your district feel, would say that individual should be removed immediately. That individual should not be present in the United States at all. But here we're talking about, at least for that class of individuals, we're talking about, again, consequences for Social Security frauds. In other words, we're layering on something on top of that which most average Americans would say we should be removing, deporting, not having them in the United States at all. And then we're coming in and saying on top of that, oh, by the way, I mean, if you commit Social Security fraud, you really shouldn't be here. I mean, I'm just trying to put in perspective kind of the absurdity of the spectrum on which we find ourselves.
Well,
I wonder if the gentleman might comment.
well, it's pretty simple, actually. These bills are applying to drunk drivers, ID thieves, Hamas operatives, exactly the same provisions that we already apply for visa overstays, violating of non-immigrant status or condition of entry, smuggling aliens, committing marriage fraud, being a drug user or a drug addict, falsely claiming U.S. citizenship, engaging in espionage. We're simply applying the same provisions that apply to aliens who have violated those laws to drunk drivers, ID thieves, and terrorists. I don't think that's too much to ask, but the Democrats do, and that tells us a great deal about the attitudes of the parties on this issue.
So we've got 4 bills here, high-speed chases with respect to Border Patrol agents, protecting ourselves from DUIs, i.e. people who are committing acts of driving under influence or have committed such an act, engaging in Social Security fraud, a fairly significant problem for people if you take someone's identity and steal their hardworking contributions to Social Security, and then no benefits, i.e. you shouldn't be here if you're, I don't know, cavorting with terrorists like Hamas who endanger the American people and endanger our friends in Israel. So that's the position that we're laying forward in these 4 measures. Is that correct? I yield back, Mr. Chairman.